Ritalin, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, they put me on Ritalin when I was like 7-ish, and then I was suicidal within like a week of taking it,
Oh god.
and so they had to take me off. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Um, and so they were like, well, therapists don't know what they're talking about, so they never took me again and ignored like all of the results. I didn't know until I tried to join the military like 3 years ago, 4 years ago. And they were like, what's this about like having depression? And I was like, you're not supposed to know that. I haven't seen a doctor. Isn't it pretty?
Yeah, I like it a lot.
Some of her other worlds, she focuses on pretty more than she focuses on performance. So one of her worlds is literally so intense that my 2080 doesn't like it. You have to have the big red text. It's like, oh my god, she does what?
Yeah,
Takes
fucking
off her shirt.
3 arrows, like fucking butt picture, like just everything all at once. No, I actually do.
The emoji with like the hat biting its lip.
Well, so I had a conversation with my friend and my thumbnail maker, well, who's also my friend, and we were kind of thinking like the emoji stuff and like some of the clickbaity stuff is like kind of insincere for like what these videos are. So we're kind of trying to stay away from them. However, we still try to make it flashy as we can. So, starting with why this world? What is special about it?
It's pretty. It's also where I spend like most of my time AFK. So.
Who introduced this world to you, or did you kind of find it randomly?
I found it randomly. So, I usually world hop a bunch and just go to like a bunch of worlds that look nice. And this was recommended. Not this one of her other worlds, because they're all just amazing. And so I just looked through her profile and I went through each of her worlds and chose this one.
And out of curiosity, is your avatar custom made or just from a more remote world?
This avatar was made by Haley. Not for me specifically, but as far as I know, I'm the only one who uses it because it's one of her more obscure ones.
So you don't have to give your name, but what would you like to be called?
You can call me whatever. No, wait, not whatever. Wait, don't dad joke that. That's dumb.
Yeah, I was like, well.
I guess in other games, people call me Mimi, so that's fine.
So like Nini as an N-I-N-I?
M-I.
Oh, Mimi. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So you wouldn't be fine with saying Kelfie? You know, you wanna stick with Mimi then?
Oh no, I mean either one, wherever one's easier.
I think Kelfie's. I like Kelfie better.
Yeah, that's what most people say. I've had Kelfie for like 6 years or so.
All right. So, age or age range? Where do you lie?
Oh, I'm 25.
Okay. Mid-20s.
I'm an old boomer.
Oh, jeez. How do you think that makes me feel? Oh god, I'm 28. So, where were you born, and where do you live now?
I was born in Germany.
Really?
I was born in Germany, and now I live in the States.
Did you immigrate over, or what happened there?
No, I was. I'm a citizen. I'm a U.S. citizen.
Where in the U.S.?
Right now I live in South Carolina.
Okay.
It is shit. Sorry, it is bad.
How specifically is it terrible?
I mean, is that what you want the 2-hour video to be about?
Give maybe like a minute of bullet points. What's wrong about South Carolina?
I mean, today it's 105 degrees, the humidity is like 90%, and that's just the weather. It does rain every single day, and it storms the other days, and we get hurricanes.
Yeah.
It's basically Florida without the old people. It is the American South, so all the problems with that. Politically, it's the worst place. Alabama's worse, actually. Florida's worse. They're all fighting and they're all competing, but South Carolina's trying to fight in that ring. So yeah.
The way you describe that, do you plan on moving at some point?
Oh, I moved here last year.
Oh, for a job?
I moved here with to live with my roommates.
Okay.
Before that, I lived in Alabama, which, again, all of what I just said except add tornadoes.
Jeez. Yeah, I haven't heard too many good things about the bottom right of the states. But okay.
I mean, there's not a lot of good things to say.
So obviously you speak a da English, but are there any languages that you also know or that you're interested in learning?
No, I don't speak any other languages. I've thought about learning French, and I've thought about learning, like Korean. Back when I was assistant teaching up in Seattle, I did pick up a little bit of Russian because two of my students were heavily Russian. They were like kindergartners, and so I was trying to help them learn a little bit English faster.
Okay.
Same thing for Spanish. I did know a little bit of Spanish. I no longer know Spanish because I don't use it.
It's about to get serious. I'm going to ask you the most difficult question you've ever had to think about in your life. Are you possibly prepared for this?
Sure.
What's your favorite color?
My favorite color is probably teal. But people say that what I say is teal isn't teal, so those people are incorrect.
Incorrect. You have the wrong favorite color. But teal, I mean, so is that the same color as your avatar's hair and like these crystals?
Yeah, that's actually correct.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that color too. So you're part of the blue gang, okay? So I don't have to kill you. All right. But next question.
I mean, depending on who you talk to, teal is green.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, what color is this dress? You know, people will argue all day about that stuff.
Yeah, color's relative. Some languages don't have a word for certain colors, so.
Or if you're colorblind. But what brings you to be your best self?
Nothing.
And how would you describe nothing?
I really wouldn't. It's really just like if I'm not attempting to be my best self, then I might as well not attempt to do anything at all.
I'm kind of curious to understand like your thought process or just your experience with that, because like that sounds like meditation when you think about it. You know, just kind of being more present and not thinking about it too much. But then I also hear a bit of goal setting in there, like I want to strive to be the best me.
Oh no, I am 100% brain off, except the fact that I have anxiety, which means that my brain is 100% always on.
Okay.
I'm just kind of ignoring it most of the time. But for the most part, if I'm not doing stuff, then I will choose to do nothing almost every single time. So I have to keep myself busy constantly.
All right.
Basically, when I come home, I either crash. Yeah.
I was just saying, we already got some talking points going on there. But before...
That's why I work 2 jobs.
Before we dive into it, though.
Sure.
On a scale of 0 to 10, 0 being I never lie to myself, 10 being I lie to myself all the time, where would you find yourself on that scale on your average day?
I don't know. I'd probably say like, wait, sorry, what was the scale again? 0 is being a lot and 10 being none?
0,
Or
I
0,
don't
none,
lie.
10, a lot.
10, I lie a lot. Yeah.
I'd probably say like 7, 8. But I don't even know if I'm lying most of the time. I just like don't think I know.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I'll be like, oh, you can do this, and then I realize I can't do it.
Hmm.
Then I'm like, oh, okay, maybe I can do it like less. I still can't do it. I'm like,
Hmm.
well, I gotta do it, and then eventually I'll get it done.
What do you feel like you would want to talk about first, whether past, present problems, so on and so forth?
Let's keep it chronological. Mm, okay. Um, well, I'm not like a super dramatic person though. Like I don't have like a ton of like moments of like I guess pure interest or something. Um, but when I was younger, so I move around a lot. I move like every 2 years. I think I told you that.
Mm-hmm.
Because my parents are both military. Ah, and so when I was a kid, like both my parents were working. I didn't see them very often. Um, and then I went from Germany to my mom got knocked up by my dad in Turkey.
Oh.
Yeah. So depending on how you define existence, I guess I was created in Turkey,
Mm-hmm.
but then I was born in Germany, so that's what most people care about.
Okay.
And I moved to Guam. Germany is where my brother was born. Guam is where my first sister was born. And then I moved to the States in like 2003, 2004. And that's Virginia, which is where my last sister was born. And then my dad got fixed and he can't have kids anymore.
Mm.
It was literally within like a month of her being conceived. Um, and then I lived in Virginia, moved to North Carolina. Uh, that's where I went to middle school, and I went to high school in Massachusetts, in Boston. Graduated, went to Washington for college, worked a couple years there on both sides of the state. I don't know where you're from. Have you been to Washington?
I have a friend who's up in Washington State, but I'm in Colorado right now.
Washington's basically two states split in half, right?
Hmm.
Eastern Washington's like desert. It's like desert and cornfields and stuff, and Western Washington's like Seattle.
Okay.
Um, so I lived on Eastern Washington. I went to WSU, and then I moved to Western Washington and lived in Tacoma on like $6 an hour or something like that.
Oh, what the fuck?
Um, mhm. That was my assistant teaching job.
Oh.
Um, and then I went back to the east side and lived there for like a year or so, and then moved with my family to Alabama, lived there for 2 years, and then moved on my own to my roommates here in South Carolina.
Hmm.
Boom, bam, bing.
Oh man, sounds like we got a lot of relatable traveling history there. Just kind of ping ponging all over the states and in foreign countries too, because of the military parents.
I'm not even close to done. I just get bored really easily.
Hmm.
I can't conceive of how people stay in one place.
What is it that you would like to focus on first?
Um, I guess most people focus on the moving part. Um, but as I told you, I also have like heavy ADHD, which you wouldn't be able to tell by talking to me.
Which you
Um,
said I would or wouldn't be able to tell.
you wouldn't be able to tell.
I definitely was able to tell just because I am a brother. I have it myself.
Me and my roommates unlock each other all the time, or we'll walk out and you ever play Pokemon?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that happens. Our eyes meet, and then we start talking about anything. And he's like an engineer. And my second degree I'm working on is in computer engineering. So we just talk about like math, politics, back to math, computers, engineering, Magic the Gathering, math, politics, Magic the Gathering.
So in
And it'll
other
just be like 6
words,
hours.
you take a tangential field trip.
Forever. Ad
Yeah.
infinitum until one of us goes, wait, it's two. We have to go back to our rooms.
wait, spend 12 hours.
Yeah, that's basically how conversations end. They don't end like Oh yeah, we have nothing else to talk about. It goes, we have to stop.
Sounds familiar. So are you
Mhm.
wanting to talk about ADHD or anxiety or moving around and how that affected you?
I mean, I'm sure all those things are interconnected.
Mm-hmm.
Because I've been diagnosed since I was like 6, but my parents don't like shrinks, so sorry, therapists.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so they were like, they put me on
Adderall?
ADHD medicine. It wasn't Adderall.
Ritalin?
Ritalin, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, they put me on Ritalin when I was like 7-ish, and then I was suicidal within like a week of taking it,
Oh god.
and so they had to take me off. Yeah. Um, and so they were like, well, therapists don't know what they're talking about, so they never took me again and ignored like all of the results. I didn't know until I tried to join the military like 3 years ago, 4 years ago. And they
Mm-hmm.
were like, what's this about like having depression? And I was like, you're not supposed to know that. I haven't seen a doctor. And he was like, well, there's like records here. And he showed me the records and they were like from 2005 or 2004. I was like, huh, weird. I had to call my parents. I was like, what the fuck are you guys, what the fuck is this? You gonna tell me about this anytime? Because
Mm.
the military looks through like everything. And especially since I went through military doctors, there's nothing to hide from them. So
Yeah. What branch did you join?
I didn't join. I was not able to.
Oh wow.
But I was going for the Air Force. Yeah, I got a 99 on the ASVAB though.
What the hell?
Mhm.
And they still wouldn't let you because of some depression. That's so much bullshit. They
Well, on
must
the
be
record, it
capped
was
out.
anxiety, depression. Sorry?
I'm just saying they must be capped out on their quota because like there's no way. There's a ton of people that were getting in even with like when I had joined in 11. There's a ton of people getting in who
Mhm.
had way worse.
Oh, I also have eczema, so I have anxiety. So that record showed anxiety, depression, and suicidal thoughts, which, because of the Ritalin, not base.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then I have eczema as well, which is disqualifying on its own,
Oh.
but can get waived. The reason it's disqualifying is if I take the smallpox shot, I'll die. Um, and so those two things together, they were like, that's not happening.
Hmm.
Yeah.
So you say
But,
interconnected, right? As though it leads
well, yeah,
to
I think,
the big,
sorry, go ahead.
the big one. It's all interconnected. So where is
Oh, the
the
big
all
what?
the way you described it, you have different things going on and they're all interconnected, but that almost is suggestive of leading to like the big thing, whatever that may be.
I wouldn't call me big. I'm like 5'5".
Not physically.
Um, no, like it's interconnected in that like all of the things together make me like those things, right? Like at the
Mm-hmm.
ship of Theseus, like that's all the wood and the sails and stuff, right?
Yeah.
And so like no, there's not like some Avengers level threat that is like Kelfie's problems.
Well, you said you wanted to talk about, I guess, like anxiety, ADHD, and a few other things.
Oh yeah, and autism.
Yeah.
Um, I was not hard diagnosed with it, but it was hinted at because of the way I was interacting with the therapist at the time. I only had like 2 or 3 sessions before my parents called it off. And so there's that, and then just my general struggle with like making friends in school.
Mm.
And I genuinely don't have like a good time reading people's like emotions.
Oh.
Um, yeah. So like people, I just trust people for like the most part. Like I just assume everybody's just telling the truth. Um, but then like also like if someone is trying to subtly influence something like emotionally or like they're trying to drop like small hints, I'll never pick them up because I take everything people say mostly at face value.
Mm.
Like I'm pretty high functioning when it comes to like autism. But it's pretty clear to like most people that something is off, right? And so there's that. And I have only recently, like in the last 2 years-ish, been privy to that, but also I haven't had insurance for like 2 years. So now that I'm getting insurance, I'm actually going to go see like a real therapist and get diagnosed and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And they're going to tell me I got like donkey brains.
What? Donkey brains?
Oh, you don't want... If you don't get the reference, it's fine.
Definitely don't.
That one can be cut. It's from It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia.
Oh, okay.
One of the characters, his parents took him to get diagnosed. He was bullied, and all the kids were saying he had donkey brains, and his parents took him to a therapist to like clear him of donkey brains, and he used it in court.
I was gonna say, definitely shop around for a good therapist. You know, if you don't feel that they're a good fit, you're with the wrong person.
Well, when I worked here, I did psych testing for 3 months or so before COVID hit, and then COVID hit, and I lost my job.
Oh.
But I was doing like the ADHD tests and the IQ tests and stuff. So
Did you administer it to yourself?
I took the ADHD test myself, but the other ones I did not.
So going back to the autism trait, so we kind of heard not being able to like read people's emotions. Does that also include like not really like looking at their face or making eye contact? Like what all encompasses that?
I used to not make much eye contact, but now I make unrelenting eye contact to the point where they get uncomfortable.
Ooh. Dang.
No, I'm just kidding. I don't make a lot of eye contact, but I do look at people when I talk to them. A lot of the time I'm fidgeting and I can't move, like stop moving around anyways though, so people don't realize I'm not making eye contact with them. They just realize that I'm like playing with everything near me.
Hmm. So sounds like you got a trifecta of things going on here.
Yeah, and I think ADHD and autism tend to come together, and
Yeah,
anxiety and depression. Like all those things are so often together.
They are very near and dear cousins for sure, and kind of flip between each other. So
yeah, well, I don't need the family reunion.
well, that being said, how does this like come up in your day-to-day life? So like you mentioned, like kind of fidgeting and hard to make friends, and like how does it interfere with things or kind of create like a sense of stress or lack of fulfillment? You know.
I'm never fulfilled, like ever. But that's probably more just I don't feel like getting something finished is like the end of anything. I have problems. I guess I don't feel like gratification. And that might be just part of like the long-term depression part, because like in general, I don't feel like super happy about getting stuff done or doing anything. It's just that I do everything I can pretty much just to do them. So like, for example, I work 2 jobs and then I'm working on like a comic and I do all this like DM stuff. And so like when I DM, I tend to do writing for each session like 16 hours a week or something. Which includes like writing, looking for music, and then like art and stuff. Then when I'm at work, I'm constantly working. And then during my downtime, I'm either talking with people or like drawing or something.
Always doing something.
Well, yeah, I can't stop. Stopping is like you might as well be asleep, which is what I do. If I'm not doing anything, I'll just go to sleep.
All right, so that's gonna that's a big that's a deep end to dive into there if you're feeling up for it.
Is
'Cause
that a deep thing? Is that abnormal?
I just wanted to prepare you for it because the question that I would ask is how willing are you to think about or reflect on when you have nothing to do or you stop to process things, just sitting with yourself.
Um, when I just sit and like process and think about like myself, which I do like now and then, because I basically have to. Like, if everybody's telling me I'm like doing everything wrong, I have to think about like why they're saying that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because like they don't just say that to like anybody. But I hear it all the time, like constantly. And so like I'm always thinking about that. Uh, and so like I'll think about like, oh, if I do this differently. And so I rapidly learn like pretty much any subject because I'll stop and reflect constantly. Um, or if I'm like talking to someone, I'll know like a lot about them because I
But
hang on like everything they say all the time.
with yourself, though, sounds like on the external
Um,
world, you flourish quite well. You know, of course, people with ADHD tend to have very exceptional capabilities, but you, like you said, you're always on. So, like, what's going on when you are off
I'm sleeping.
and when you're not sleeping?
I'm not. I'm not. Like I wake up at 5 and then I immediately text everybody, write stuff, ideas that I get from dreaming, get ready for work, go to work, and I come home. I'll play like games or something. Like I'll play like Final Fantasy 14
Mm.
or sometimes VRChat. Come in here. Um, but I come into VRChat and I talk to a bunch of people all the time. I give like head pats a lot. Um, literally until my arm hurts. Um, and then I'll play Final Fantasy, and then there's a lot of stuff I like to do, like money-wise. Like I'm just constantly trying to like level my character, do money. So it's basically work still, as far as I'm concerned, because it's not like a relaxing experience.
That's right.
Um, but uh, yeah, and I'll do or I'll play League, which is definitely not a relaxing experience. It's like basically shooting yourself in the foot for fun.
Could you
Um,
describe to me when the last time it was that you sat in off mode when you weren't sleeping?
I don't know. I don't know what like off mode would like feel like. I guess like when I smoked weed. Sorry, can I say that on YouTube?
Yeah, 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 it's fine.
When I did the devil stuff, um, like that would allow me to like sit down and just like lay and like stare at stuff. And then sometimes I'll hang out with my roommates and I'll talk with them. But I can't like sit around people quietly for too long. It makes me anxious, and so I'll leave.
Mm, that's really interesting. Because the way I would explain it is that, well, most people understand that in life you want to try and achieve happiness. It tends to be fleeting and short lived. Or if you want to chase fulfillment, that's more, long burning and sticks around for a while. But then there's that third one that, not a lot of people kind of have success with, and that's finding, you know, peace and consistent contentness.
Mm.
So it sounds as though that's probably been a very significant struggle for a while. And let me let me put this together real quick. So you move around a lot, hopping from place to place, always moving,
Mhm.
always on. Have a hard time making friends because you're always on, you're accelerated, you're ahead of the curve. It's hard to kind of relate to people who, can't exactly go 100 miles per hour like you can.
I wouldn't say
Always.
that so much. I feel like everybody I know is actually really impressive.
Hmm,
Like I admire like pretty much everybody I ever met.
hmm. So I definitely say that's an admirable quality of kind of recognizing the strengths and the positives within everyone. But the point that I was leading to is, seems as from what I've
Yeah, sorry, I
heard.
didn't mean to interrupt.
Oh no, it's fine. No, feel free to correct me whenever, because like that'll help us move in a more
Mhm.
accurate direction. The way I kind of am hearing it right now is that your life has sort of taught you to always be on. You've always had to adapt and engage in new environments and kind of overcome challenges. So it seems like that's been happening for so many years that it's basically like your default mode. And I find
Well,
it
yeah.
terribly
Sorry, go ahead.
concerning. I find it terribly concerning that you can't describe to me what off mode looks like.
Um, I mean, I could have had it and just like not been able to describe it, I suppose. But it does. It's just sleeping. Like if I have nothing to do, like if I come home and I don't think of anything to do, like I can't think of any ideas to write or something, I do just go straight to sleep. I'll go to sleep at like 6 or 7.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, I'm the oldest of like 4, and so it's hard to be like off because my brother has BPD.
Oh.
Um, and so like I could get a call from him at like midnight or something, and he could need me. Or like my parents don't know how to deal with mental illnesses, so they've called me when he visits, when he has an episode, they'll call me, so I have to deal with that. Um, and then my 2 sisters are much younger. They're like babies. Well, they're not babies anymore because they're graduating, which is fucked up.
How old are they?
Uh, 18 and 17, or 18 and 16.
Hmm.
But I remember them being like baby babies. Like I could like pick them up.
Hmm.
I can't pick them up anymore because they're like taller than me, which is also fucked up.
Sounds like you care about them a lot.
Oh yeah, no, I'd die for my siblings.
So, I mean, I heard that your parents sort of pass on your brother's struggles to you. Like, how did that come about?
My brother's always been, my brother's always had BPD, but he's only gotten diagnosed within the last year. Um, I've known he's had it because I used to read up a lot on like mental disorders when I was in like middle school and high school because I was trying to figure out like why I didn't like understand people. Um, but I'm the opposite of my brother. Like my mood tends to never change. But his can swing rapidly from like really high and really low, and he like recognizes it because he's pretty self-aware as well.
Hmm.
Um, so like recently he had an episode where he had like a really low point. I think it was like his friends weren't online or something. And then so he was bummed about that, and then he went downstairs, and my sister didn't make enough pizza rolls. It's very small, but it made him go like really high in terms of like anger. And so he yelled at my sister. He just yelled at her. He's like super soft in terms of that. And my sister is like a mean girl.
Hmm.
Um, so he yelled at her, and then he felt immediately bad, and it caused him to like start crying and freaking out. Like he literally couldn't like talk or anything. And my parents didn't know how to deal with it because my dad's like, uh, he's not a Republican, but he's close boomer. He's boomer adjacent. Um, and then my mom has like a psych degree, but it's for marketing, so
Hmm.
it's basically worthless.
So, in other words, it sounds like they're just really not equipped to handle their child?
I would say yes, but with the caveat that they don't have a lot of reference. Like my mom has like 13 moms
What?
and 2 dads. Yeah. Um, like a bunch of stepmoms, but she calls them all mom.
You
Because my
said
grandpa like
13?
fucked. Yeah, she has like 13 stepmoms.
What? Is this
My
in
my
America?
grandfather fucked. Yeah, this is in America. Not all at once. He divorced them a bunch. Um, so like my mom's been leaped around a bunch of houses, and then her biological mom basically didn't want to have a lot to do with her. She just wanted to like party and stuff. And so like my mom would have like a different mom every other year.
Hmm.
And then my grandfather died when my dad was 5 in a motorcycle racing accident. Um, and so my grandma's always been like a single mother, and my dad has been raised by her and my great aunt, who's wonderful. Um, but he grew up in like the projects of Illinois, and so he's seen like a bunch of shit. Um, so my parents haven't had like a ton of reference for how to be like a good parent because they've had like varying levels of, shit household because that is the American experience, I think. Um,
It's very true to in certain degrees. But one thing I'd like to point out there is it sounds as though that this always on cycle is generational in one way or another.
yeah, yeah, my dad works probably twice as many hours as I do in a given time.
Mm.
Um, he doesn't have anxiety. What does he have? He's got, no, I think he does have anxiety. He won't get diagnosed. He won't see an actual therapist. He just wants to see VA therapists. Um, and the ones he's seen are not good, like at all,
Mm.
because they're just clearing him. I think he's going in and being on his best behavior because I've seen him be very easy to trigger in the household. Not in like a violent way or anything, just like in an easy way. Like he can get pretty angry fast, or like he can get upset really quickly over like a little thing. And so, whenever there's like vacations or anything, he just shuts down as well. So, um, and then my mom's probably the most neurotypical of the family.
You said
She's
whenever
like,
there's a vacation, he shuts down?
yeah, so he goes through like a thing where he goes on like a vacation for a long time because he didn't used to take vacation days in the military until like the very end when they're about to expire, which, that's like 3 years of no vacations.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so he would bank all of those and you have like a month or two off. And like whenever he goes through those, he just like gets super, he either like lays around the house all day or plays like a ton of World of Warcraft. Um, it's like he doesn't like know what to do with his time
Hmm.
because it's either like working all the time or not. And my dad's a little bit of a Pinkerton, so
Would you be able to explain to everyone what a Pinkerton is?
uh, um, I don't want to get into politics. Pinkerton's basically just like a person who's high up in a company, um, who works to stamp out unions and has a very conservative mindset. It's the nicest way I'll put it.
Okay.
Um,
So,
yeah, my dad's a plant manager at GE, so
bringing things back, since we got a little bit of Some family history there. Sounds like it would be something very difficult to achieve in terms of what your family and you have kind of struggled to find, being peace and contentment and knowing how to, just sit with yourself, or even how else to spend your time in a more relaxing way.
I've personally never looked for peace. I think it's not something that I necessarily deserve or should be working towards. My
Deserve?
parents look for peace pretty well. I think they do a lot of like materialistic things.
Well, hold on. You
But
said
they
does
don't.
you said deserve? What do you mean?
Yeah, yeah, I think like you should have to like earn that kind of thing, right? Like um, working a certain amount of time or like achieving certain things.
Hmm.
I guess you should be comfortable whenever you take breaks, and I never feel comfortable when I take breaks. It's kind of like if you got like given a gift, right? You wouldn't really like that. So,
Where did you learn that you had to earn peace?
um, mm, I've always thought that.
What's the earliest time that you can remember thinking that?
Probably middle school.
Something happened?
No, not really. I was relentlessly bullied as a kid,
Mm.
and so I always like was very introspective and thought about it. Um, Granted, working harder did not make me get bullied less. If anything, maybe get bullied more. Um, but like the bullying stopped when I got to high school, not because of anything that changed with me. I just happened to move to a school um, where they wouldn't do it, right?
Yeah.
Um, a lot of the stuff in middle school though was like, oh, if I am not like good enough to like be good at talking to people, I should be good enough to like do stuff at least. And so I learned how to do like a bunch of stuff.
Hmm.
So I used to like spend my time. I learned how to code when I was in middle school. I used to write like pages a day, like 10 to 15 pages a day sometimes. Um, I had good grades until I decided I wasn't going to do homework anymore, and then my grades decided to, plummet. But I still got like hundreds on tests and stuff because I was always paying attention. Um, because I got like really bored in class, and then homework
Yep.
was like grading. Yeah, American school system very bad for people who surpass the school system. My parents' method of teaching me stuff, because they weren't very good at like school subjects. I think by fourth grade they weren't super good at explaining concepts. They just used to buy me like the math workbooks for like fourth and fifth graders and sixth graders, and I would just fill them out. Maybe like this thick.
I like how you pointed out that the American education system is still it's gotten better, but still struggling to accommodate gifted learners.
Yeah, and it's not just like gifted learners, it's any neurodivergent learners, I would say. I think
Exactly.
saying gifted makes it sound like they're like better, but it's really just like it's not. The school system uses like a huge shotgun approach to just hit as many
Yeah.
students as possible.
Basically, so, if you don't fit within the molds, then you're likely to be underserved or left behind.
Yeah, and so the school system is really weird like that. By the time I got to a school that was challenging, so Massachusetts, going from North Carolina to Massachusetts is a huge leap in terms of like education. I went
Mm-hmm.
to the third best high school in Massachusetts at the time, and then the second high school I went to was the seventh best. And Massachusetts is top 5 in the country, so
Yep.
I was going to really good schools. So the first one I went to, um, literally so much higher that like Algebra 2 was a freshman class. I hadn't even taken Algebra 1. And they were like, you're going to have to take a remedial class if you don't know Algebra 1. And I was like, I'm not taking a remedial class because I don't know what remedial means, but I'm not doing it. And so I took Algebra 2 my freshman year without Algebra 1 knowledge, and I had to learn Algebra 2 while learning Algebra. I had to learn Algebra 1 while learning Algebra 2 at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
And so I only got a C in that class, and that was pretty devastating. And then the next year, the next school I went to, because I only went to my first school for 1 year, I took geometry, which is a freshman year class at that one, so I was with a bunch of people 1 year younger than me, which is funny because I got an iPad out of it. I did really well with that. I've always been really good at math, and even with that year, I just decided to not be bad at algebra anymore, and I went over the summer and just learned algebra online, like watching YouTube. And then I basically just kind of did whatever through high school, except my junior year. I don't actually remember what happened junior year.
It was a blur.
Yeah, that one's a just like a low year, because one of my friends moved, like my closest friend moved, and I was like super bummed out. And so like I just like coasted that whole year. I don't remember what happened. And then the summer after, I was like, wait, I can't be like down like that because like how's that gonna look to my siblings? How's that gonna look to like friends?
I can't be
It's not really
down.
fair to people.
So you said I can't be down?
Yeah.
How would you explain that?
It's like a responsibility to like, you know, uh, not shut off so that, you can help people.
So you had said the earliest was middle school, but like let's just zero in on this for a second. You feel as though that you just cannot put the time in to take care of yourself or process what's going on. You don't have time for it, and you have to be ready to go for other people. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, that's pretty accurate. Since a lot of the bullying, wasn't stuff. Like I realized pretty fast. I'd say I realized, by like 6th grade that like a lot of stuff I was getting bullied for. It wasn't stuff that I could change anyways, right? Like it's like skin color, height, my
So kids
eczema,
just being mean.
that kind of. Yeah,
Okay.
I realized like that kind of stuff is like stuff you can't change anyways. So like being introspective about that stuff is kind of worthless. But I also was realizing that it was happening every time I moved. And, even if they were making fun of my height and skin color, there were still other kids with those traits that were doing perfectly fine. And so, why was I being told I was talk too much and I'm annoying if like other people talk a lot, right? Relative to what I thought was, talking a lot. So I had to consider like, how much am I talking to people? What happens if I don't talk to people? That kind of stuff. And so I do have to be like super vigilant in terms of like how I interact with people. But then it turned into like a job. Like basically any social interaction is like a job, right? Where you have to do like a ton of work. Because when it doesn't come naturally, that means you have to think about it a lot. And so like
so you can't relax around other people because you've been very vigilant with how you are to people, and this kind of would potentially link up to the ADHD and the autism, because a lot of people in the autistic community describe very conscious and taxing efforts to kind of socialize with people, and then they tend to prefer to be with specific friends or alone.
Pretty much. And yeah, like that makes sense, right? In my experience, like specific friends are like friends that are like very easy to read or like very open. I tend to be really like a lot of my friends tend to be like quote unquote mean people in that they're like brutally honest or whatever. But because they are so honest and they don't lie, I tend to be more comfortable around them. And they're not mean because they're like saying mean things. They're mean because they're not filtered. At least that's the way I see it. I don't really tolerate abuse though. Like, I'm not a big fan of like people who insult their friends for fun. I think that's something I don't hang around very much. But I do
That's
realize
crossing
that
a
it's
line
very,
of
very common.
toxic behavior there. The way
Well,
I
yeah.
would describe what you're saying is it sounds like they're actually you look for good people because you can't so there's nice but nice isn't exactly good because you have to have a spine, you have to have teeth, you have to have honesty to do,
Mhm.
the right thing. Because if somebody has a serious problem that they're not aware of, a nice friend is going to try and sugarcoat it, but it might go over their head, whereas somebody honest, a good person, is going to tell them. They're going to be honest about it, even if it hurts their feelings.
I mean, that might be a good um, observation. I don't really attribute that to being a good person, though. One, because I don't really think I can judge who is and isn't like a good person. I can judge when they do something like if they're like, you know, an abuser or, they, do something violent, then I can be like, wow, that's a pretty bad person thing to do. But if I say like honesty is a trait that makes a good person, I think that can be a little bit conceited or arrogant because like, there's a lot of shy people who, I wouldn't really feel super comfortable with because they're not talking a lot.
Mm-hmm.
But then also, they're not bad people because they might very well not tell you that you got like lettuce in your teeth because that might be embarrassing for them, or they might not know like
Not
how you'll react to
necessarily.
that, right?
I wouldn't pin it to like your general interactions with people, but if we're talking about what a good
Mhm.
friend might be, like a friend, somebody that you hold close, that's kind of where I would start, attaching a little bit of labels or categories to things. Just a way of kind of keeping, or introducing some peace into your life, people that you can feel comfortable around and be able to relax.
Mhm.
Not have your walls and your barriers up.
Yeah, I would say I make friends with good people, but I don't make friends with every good person. I think that's a very fair way to put it.
Yeah, yeah, that makes sense. It sounds as though like
Um,
you have defined tastes for the people that you surround yourself with.
I'll sort of. I surround myself with a lot of questionable people. People are like work for me sometimes. Um, because
Hmm.
I consider so like one of the decisions I also made in middle school was obviously I'm not the only person getting bullied. Like uh, I have eyes. I can see other people getting bullied a lot of the time. And so I used to, get in a lot of fights because I'd put my nose where it's not supposed to be.
Hmm.
Um, because I figured, like, at some point, around seventh, sixth grade or so, I made the decision that no, actually, I think this is fifth grade. Sorry, fourth, fifth grade is when I really started to realize that, like, if I'm getting bullied and this is how I feel, then other people must also be getting bullied and feeling in a similar way.
Hmm.
And so that's when I started to decide that, like, regardless of how anxious or like how tiring it can be, that I should at least make some effort to reach out to people at some level, or at least step in when I see that there's some kind of problem. And so that's what I used to do a lot of the time, which means that I did have times when I would move and then bullies would, apologize to me or like say really nice things to me. Um, but in general, that doesn't really make a lot of friends, believe it or not. or at least I never felt comfortable making friends with people like that.
Hmm.
Because it always felt like they were only doing it because I was doing a service for them, or like because I did the nice thing. And I don't want people to feel like they owe me or anything. I think that's pretty unfair.
There was something I wanted to kind of ask about, and I was sort of hearing that even if you feel as though you're at your limit, you're anxious, or you're, kind of already expending a lot of energy, you would still make effort to reach out or give to other people. So in this respect, how well do you know your limits? And like, could you describe a time when you burnt out?
Oh, I burn out all the time. I go
Hmm.
through a cycle of burning out. It's fun, but not
Hmm.
really. I wouldn't recommend it. Um, I call it a rally. Basically, if someone is more anxious than me or seems to be in a worse mood than me, I immediately go back to my baseline or higher.
Hmm.
Um, I guess I'm kind of like a changeling. That's why I rated high on the lying part, because I tend to do it a lot.
Do you feel as though that, despite the autistic traits, do you feel as though you have empathic traits or capabilities?
Yeah, I feel pretty empathetic. I get really sad when people get really sad.
Huh.
It's just
That.
that I don't get really sad when something sad happens to me.
Hmm. Well, that could be
I
explained
feel more
for.
emotion when it's through someone else than if it happens to me.
Yeah, that could be explained for by a lot of different parts. But
Hmm.
let would you be able to talk more about the the vicious cycle of burning out and rallying and burning out, and whether it's with yourself or other people?
Vicious sounds so like uh, high stakes compared to what it's really like. It's really just like someone's having like a bad time, like they break up or something, and like I just talk to them every day for like 2 or 3 months, and then they feel better. Maybe they'll get together with somebody or something. Um, and then it drifts off, and then once they stop talking, then I start to like catch up. Like the rally always ends eventually. And then I have like 1 or 2 weeks of just kind of like going through motions, like work, sleep, etc.
Hmm. So more
Typically, I won't talk
specifically.
to anybody during those times. Yeah.
uh, Okay, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. But um, so that was kind of involving other people. What about just you by yourself? Because like when you talk about burnout, that's kind of like work, 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 or you're doing a ton of things and then crash, burnout, or even just like a subtle
When it
overtime kind of crash.
work never makes me burn out. I've always worked forever. When I was in high school, I had 3 jobs. Then when I left high school, got to college, I only had college, but they wouldn't let me work at the time. So what I would do is I would go to the gym and work out from like 4 in the morning to my first class, and then I would go home. And I would just have like classes throughout the day. I took like 19 credits every semester.
Jesus.
Um, uh, and then when I was volunteering, when I was assistant teaching, which was volunteer work, but also was paid, whole thing, that was like 12 hours a day because it would be school and then after school work. And I come home with my roommates who I work with, and then we'd go to sleep, do it again, right?
Hmm.
I think the least I've ever worked, besides like middle school and early high school, was when I was in Alabama, and I just had like a normal 9 to 5, and I was just trying to find like anything to do at times. So I took like music lessons, I took drawing lessons. I was like drawing. That's when I was doing D&D for like 20 hours a week. Um, And so like now here I have two jobs. So I have my job that I'm doing now, and then I have a job where I work with a bunch of dogs, and then I'm also working on some writing projects and stuff. So
Okay, when was the earliest point in your life that you went to Mach 5?
senior year of high school, right after that junior year.
Okay, and what was going on to where you were just on, doing everything?
That summer I decided to not be so I decided like even if I was like super sad that like I needed to like not let myself fall because I was
Mm,
seeing like there was all those like incel things like people lonely incels like doing like shootings and all that kind of stuff. I didn't think I'd become one of those, but I could understand like the headspace of being like super isolated,
mm,
and like being able to go down those rabbit holes. Um, and like fundamentally, I just want to be a person that does more good than bad, right? I think that's like most people.
mm-hmm.
Um, and so when I had like a whole year where I did nothing and I couldn't remember anything, that's where I was like, I just did like a whole year of bad.
Mm.
Um, and so
You said a
I
whole year
started
of
volunteering
bad.
over the summer.
Hold on, a whole year of bad. What do you mean by that? Bad is
I didn't
nothing?
interact with anybody.
Oh.
As far as I'm concerned, I didn't interact with any people during my junior year. Um, I didn't really talk with like my parents or siblings. I would just come home and like play video games and go to bed. Um, it was just like a year where that. I mean, I don't know details because, like I said, I just remember the general feeling.
So that was the blur year?
Um, mhm. My
Okay.
junior year was.
So that's kind of important to note. Um, I could just say it, but I kind of want to see what was happening sophomore year that led up to that. Were you also going Mach 5 or was this because of something else?
Um, so I'm gonna actually go back to freshman year because I'm gonna explain. Freshman year, I did school and I was doing sports for the first time ever. I was not a sports kid.
Okay.
The sports I did were crew and wrestling, which are extremely physically intensive.
Yeah.
I was running 3 miles a day for warm up. And then for wrestling, it was 1 mile a day for warm up, but then a lot of weight training. So I went from not even being able to run the mile to being forced to run three. Um, and my dad was like, "You're gonna quit within like 2 weeks." And I'm a very spiteful person when it comes to my dad. If my dad
Mm.
says anything, I'll do the opposite. Because I also have ODD. Sorry. Um, I have oppositional defiancy disorder. I know you probably know what that is, but I guess I should explain it.
Yeah, that's a good
Um,
idea.
Oppositional defiancy disorder, typically very common in young males, as far as I know, but mine never really went away, especially when it came to my dad. Um, so like he would say, "Oh, yeah, you've done this and you're gonna quit because you don't really do sports." And so just to like spite him, I didn't do any sort of quitting. I would just like come home super dead, tired, pain, um, and I would just keep doing it. Uh, well, when I moved to the next school, they didn't have either of those sports, so I didn't do that. Instead, I hung out with I made one really, really good friend that I just hung out with all the time. Um, and we played competitive StarCraft. And so I got into competitive StarCraft. And I was doing like tournaments, I was doing all that kind of stuff. Um, and it was a pretty chill year. Like I wouldn't say my sophomore year was bad or anything. But then he moved, like, at the end of the year.
Mm.
And so, like, I did lose, like, a really good friend, and that's what triggered the next year of just, like, complete shutdown.
And how does depression and anxiety come into your life today?
Um, like a cannon.
10 in both?
Uh, huh?
Sorry, maybe.
Anxiety comes in. Sorry, like a cannon, like a
Oh, a cannon. They said 10.
yeah.
Okay.
No, not a 10. Um, there's been two other times where I've had shut down, like my junior year. My freshman year of college was the second semester. There was a financial aid issue uh, that like sent me into a spiral, and I basically failed that semester. Like I just got like a 0
Mm.
because I didn't leave my dorm room. Um, After that, I was like, holy shit, I did it again. So I started working at a daycare. Like I went back to live with my parents. Worked at a daycare. Learned of the opportunity in Seattle, and so I was like, well, I only have $50, but maybe that's like the thing to do. So I just like on a whim moved to Seattle and did that stuff for a year. And I did really well, like exceptionally well. No employer has ever said that I've been bad, as far as I know. Um, and so I did that for a year, and it's a 1-year gig. Have you heard of AmeriCorps?
I think so.
They're great. Basically, you work for a year, and they give you like a stipend, and then they'll give you $5,000 for to pay off your student loans.
Hmm.
Which is about as much as I had, so that's why I did it in the first place. Um, to undo that mess, but also just to like see what that world was like. It was fun. And then I got into data entry and the financial world when I moved back to the east side. And that's what I do now, more so, because I'm very good with working with like data and all that kind of stuff.
You feel anxious daily. Maybe we should scale that. So, like 0 to 10, where do you feel like you're at on a regular basis? And then the same with depression.
Um, I don't know. I think that's like a relative scale, right? I guess I don't think I'm more anxious or depressed than like other people who are anxious or depressed for the most part.
It's how
Like I don't
you
hit
feel. How do you feel?
probably like a 5 or so.
On which one?
Um, it's enough to like be disruptive, but it's not like as life-ruining as it is for other people, I think.
Is it a
A lot
5
of
for
people get
both?
like suicidal thoughts. Yeah, about a 5 for both.
Okay.
When I go through like depressive episodes, it's a lot worse, like 6 or 7.
Mm.
Um, and then like anxiety attacks, I've had a couple of those. I didn't really start getting anxiety attacks, like social anxiety attacks, until after I did the assistant teaching job because I was 12 hours a day working with kids. So when I went back to school to finish my degree, I didn't actually know how to talk to people anymore. Like I had completely forgotten all the like skills and stuff I learned.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so like I went to a party, and then instead of being able to enjoy myself, I was like realizing that I could not interact with people appropriately. And so I started to like spiral. And then my friend who took me to the party went off with a girl to like, do what you do with girls if you're straight. Um,
I'll have a pillow fight.
yeah, a very monetization friendly pillow fight.
Yes.
Um, and so he went off to, do that with one of the girls that we were there with. Just fine. Like that's what you do when you go to parties.
Mm-hmm.
But didn't mean I was left alone, which was bad. Because I went through like a complete spiral, and like obviously college students at a party are not trained to recognize signs of an anxiety attack. And so that kind of killed parties for me because I used to be I go to them a lot. Um, Now I think I don't really go to them anymore. I can't really handle being in a conversation with more than like 4 people at a time.
Okay, so now we got like a whole like linear line of in middle school you kind of didn't like people because you were getting bullied and that caused a lot of introspection, kind of disappeared in high school, but it was still kind of hard to make friends, and the one friend you did make, left, and then that kind of caused a depressive episode, and then going into college you had that same issue kind of reemerge. And
I will say, I've never disliked people. Even when I was bullied at my worst, I've always loved people.
mhm.
Like genuinely, I have nothing but like admiration and a lot of like respect for pretty much everybody I've met. Even when I was getting bullied, my dad was always like, just attack them, right? My dad was like, if you just punch them in the face, they'll stop bullying you. He even growled at me sometimes for not fighting back.
Oh
But
wow.
I always used to tell him, I was just be like, look, they're people too, and if I don't like being hit, and I hit them back, then even if they stop, they're still like gonna hit somebody, and now I've hit somebody. I think that's pretty fucked up. It's not really a solution.
Wow,
Um,
that's exceptional maturity for being so young.
I've
That's
been able to speak complete sentences since I was like 6 months old.
what?
Um, mhm. As my that's what my parents had said at least. I was
Hmm.
speaking around 5 or 6 months, and I was able to make complete sentences very shortly after that.
Huh.
Um, and so I've always been super verbal, and I've always been super um, thinking. Like my parents have always known that I'm intelligent in the sense that like I'm smart.
Yeah.
They just always also realized that I was like what they said was immature, but socially not present all the time.
So
Um,
so I mean, think of it in like a gamer analogy. It sounds like your intelligence is like an 8 or 9 out of 10 at a super early age, and then your sociability was maybe like at a 3 out of 10, and you're kind of struggling to level that up.
yeah, it's pretty low charisma. I wouldn't say my intelligence was super high. I genuinely don't think I'm very much smarter than like most people.
Hmm.
I don't think I ever really was. I think I had a good head start, right? Like maybe I was like a 3 when everybody else was like a 1 or 2, right? Like you got baby brains,
Mm-hmm.
and I had like teen brain. Um, but it's not like I got like that much smarter, and people caught up pretty fast anyways.
Yeah, that's true. You could have
Um,
quick acceleration, but low, you know, uh, what was it called in League? As scaling, like your scaling, might not be as
mhm,
good as other people. However, I still
yeah,
hear a lot of fervent determination in whatever it is that you set your mind's eye to. Uh,
oh, absolutely. If I'm gonna do anything, because I do stuff for people. Like I don't typically do a lot of stuff on my own. When I'm doing for D&D, um, I do like writing, but it is for the players. I wouldn't do much without that. When I go to a job, I'm working hard because I know that's why I'm there. Um, so I do everything I can to make sure that, I do stuff.
so sorry to keep interrupting, but man, I just keep having these glaring questions. Uh,
It's okay.
what does self compassion look like to you?
Could you define that? Not like in a meme way, but just like I actually forgot.
How do you take care of yourself? How do you put yourself
Um,
before other people?
I don't. If I have to do anything that puts me like before somebody, that's not super good.
So it's not super
I'll
good
do
to
stuff if it doesn't inconvenience anybody.
it's so wait, you said it's not super good to put yourself before other people. Did I hear that right?
Yeah. I will do things if it doesn't inconvenience somebody, but like otherwise, not so much.
Where did you learn that?
Um, it's just always how it's been.
Same thing.
Um,
Do you remember a time that you know, were kind of taking care of yourself or asserting your wants and needs?
um, hmm. I guess sometimes I don't do things so my parents tell me to do them.
Hmm. That would
But
be
actually, no, never mind. I do a lot for my parents. Um,
what do you do for
I
you?
don't do anything for my parents if I think that they're like, for me, I don't
Yeah.
have to do anything for myself.
What do you mean?
I'm always here. Like, I'm always myself, right?
Well, that's so distinctly foreign to hear that. You're nuanced in the sense of like when people talk about how they struggle to take care of themselves, it's usually like they have a hard time telling people no. But what I'm hearing from you is like it's almost as if like your wants and needs are invisible. You don't know what they are.
That's pretty fair. I don't think I want a lot of stuff or need a lot of stuff. I need food and water, but I don't really eat that much either.
Hmm.
Um, because I don't have a sense of taste. So I don't really enjoy food anyways. So
Oh.
I just eat food because otherwise I'll die. Um,
That might be a pretty significant problem there. Good thing you still take care of that.
yeah, I didn't used to. There was a year where I did just eat bread, and then my doctor said, "Don't do that again."
Mm.
Yeah. That was the whole thing. That was that freshman year where nothing was going right. It was bread and peanut butter.
Okay. Okay. So, here's problem number 1 that I'm going to sort of put together here. You have a significantly hard time sitting in off mode, relaxing, being content, peace, and taking care of yourself. They're all interconnected as you mentioned. And because of this,
Mhm.
you know, as far as psychoeducation goes, if you're stressed and if the stress is high enough and then if you're high stress for too long, you'll enter depression. And if that stress is still there and you've been depressed for too long, then you start to get suicidal thoughts. So if you don't take care of yourself to manage your stress and you don't minimize that or reduce it or manage yourself, you know, so that it doesn't become too much, then yeah, of course, you know, you're going to be anxious and then
Mhm.
have depressive episodes right after. Because like stress is like it's kind of like a balloon. You know, if you're stressed for too long, you're gonna pop, and the pop is basically like a depressive episode. And let's say you only have 10 balloons before you start to have suicidal thoughts. Eventually, you're gonna go pop, 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 and then boom, your last balloon is basically like your life.
Yeah, that's pretty fair. Um, I guess there's only two ways, or I guess there's a lot of ways to go about it. But the way I see it, there's a couple ways. Either I fix it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which is like it's monumental, and I don't even know if it's possible, right? Because like I've tried a lot of stuff. It's not like I don't do things that I think would make me happy,
Right.
but in general, like it doesn't fulfill like much satisfaction because even when I do things that I think I like, um, it's just like a feeling, like I just do it, right?
So
Um,
let me
so
interject
the
and
other
maybe
one,
let me
Sure.
just pause for a second, just so I don't lose this train of thought. Um, when was the last time that you remember significantly enjoying something?
Not particularly.
You
I don't think
don't
I've ever like
really ever?
not like a high amount of enjoyment. No. For the
How?
most part, I can get in like a direct moment of like, oh, this is pleasant.
Hmm.
Um, like when I go on like a roller coaster, this is pleasant. Um, or when like I had a girlfriend in high school, I used to cuddle with her. That was
Hmm.
pleasant, but it was also anxiety ridden because I was constantly anxious around her.
Oh, really?
Um,
Do you happen to
mhm.
know why?
Oh, I have no idea what reason she liked me. Like it just never um I could never like piece it together. And so I always felt like I was on
Unlovable?
borrowed time. No, not unlovable. Um I just had to understand why, and I just didn't.
Hmm. That's really
I mean, I
interesting.
can see why someone would like me, right?
Do you
I
feel you're
tend to
not?
listen very well.
You feel like
Hmm?
you're not likable?
I guess that's pretty accurate. I do think I'm likable. Like I have traits that people like, right? Like I'm very easy to listen to. I have a nice voice. Um, I'm conventionally IRL attractive. Um, what's the other thing? I listen very well. Um, I'm very good at like solving problems, or in lieu of that, I'm also very good at, knowing when to like ask someone or help someone like work through their problems and stuff. I can do all that stuff, and I think that's why people like me in that
But is
sense. But that
but
stuff is like superficial.
exactly. So I'm saying like on a logical or a cognitive level, that's how you would sort of explain it. But on an emotional level,
Mhm.
you had agreed with not feeling likable and wondering why she liked you. So like
Mhm.
how do you explain that, or what do you think about it?
Um, I don't know. I'm gonna do a monster instant type. Um, there was another girl that came to visit recently. And she stayed with the week, and we were hanging out, cuddling, and all that kind of stuff. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and it was the same feeling of like anxiousness, right?
Hmm.
Like a, you know,
When are you
why?
gonna leave?
Well, when is like it all going to come down? Like she's going to realize what I've already realized. Because I've thought about it. I know myself, right? And so
Mm-hmm.
when is the point where the person I'm talking to going to realize that I am the way I am and not the superficial parts, right?
What is the way you are?
See, that's the funny question. I don't know because I don't enjoy a lot. I don't do very much for enjoyment. Everything I do is for other people or for work. And so who I am is the superficial stuff. But under the superficial stuff is more that's really just the stuff that the superficial stuff is covering.
Hmm.
I guess that doesn't make very much sense.
Do you feel as though
Um,
that there is nothing, a void, fog, a mist
um, I
below
would
the
say there's
superficial?
something like that. I wouldn't say there's necessarily a void. It's just kind of more like like changelings, right? What a changeling is. It's like a person who's like a blank slate and they can turn into anybody.
Mm-hmm.
But they're like they can turn to anybody, they can be anybody, they can do the acting, all that. But when they're not that person, they're just a blank slate for anybody to like project onto, right?
Kelfie,
So I wouldn't say I'm necessarily like a void.
have you ever
Hmm?
have you ever felt like you know who you are? Have you ever had a strong sense of
Um,
identity at any point in your life?
Not particularly.
So if I ask you who are you, how would you answer?
I'd just say I'm Kelfie.
But beyond that, so beyond the superficial, right? Because that's what we say.
Hmm.
I'm Kelfie, I'm going to school, I live in this state. You know, I might be feeling like this right now, but as we dive below that, what would you say? Who are you?
I'm a person who does stuff for other people.
That's still on the
That's
superficial. Right?
well, that's the thing. That's what everything I built on. I
Hmm.
was, you know, I grew up. I took care of my siblings since I was like 5, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because my parents both worked, so I've always taken care of them. My parents have been, I'm an accident. My brother's an accident. My first sister's not an accident. My youngest sister's an accident.
Mm.
Um, my parents are woefully underprepared. Were woefully underprepared to be parents, and I had to learn that lesson very young.
What
Because there's
is
only two ways I thought about it. Either I hate my parents because I don't understand why um, they're not doing the things that I need them to do, right?
what is that lesson you
Um,
learned?
I learned that like people are people who need things, right? Everybody is vulnerable.
People need things. Is the lesson you learned?
Well, well, yeah, people are people. People need other people. That is fundamental to my beliefs.
Hmm.
And if you extrapolate that, if you want to be a kind person, then people need people. A lot of people, and this is an American experience, don't really have people that they can rely on. I wouldn't even say that's necessarily just American. It feels more like a first world experience in general. As a country gets richer, people tend to spread out more and be inaccessible to each other. But that's a little bit out of there.
Okay. So let me connect. People need people. Let me connect that to everything else because I think that's significant.
I can connect it if you'd like. People
Um,
need people, and I never had the people I needed. And so I decided to be the person other people needed.
there it is.
It's very simple.
But it's also the smoking gun in my perspective.
Bang.
How would you understand that?
Hmm?
How would you
Like,
think about or understand that that is the underlying roots to your anxiety and your depression?
well, I mean, I recognize that there's an uncountable amount of people who have nobody, right? Who are in worse positions or the same position as me.
Mm-hmm.
And as a person who only wants to help people, I recognize how futile it is to be able to, or to want to help everybody. Because like I said, I do love everybody, like genuinely. Um, like if a stranger came up to me and just started telling me like they won the lottery, I'd go wild, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, I'd go just as wild with them as I would with like my closest friend. Um, in terms of like how that ties together, though, it's a lot easier for me to honestly easier for me to like help others than to accept help from others. Like I just don't do the latter, like period.
And
And it's
why
not just like help,
why do
because
you
that just
struggle?
undoes everything.
Undoes everything?
Yeah, if I help someone and I expect help in return, then I'm basically netting neutral.
Netting neutral. Does this go back to the good and bad thing that you were talking about earlier?
Yeah, something like that.
So you have the understanding or the belief of kind of helping people without expecting anything in return.
Yeah, 100%.
Okay. This is an insane amount to process all at once, so I'm gonna need pausing moments.
Sorry.
Well, no, because it's so, um, it's very end tier to like human development. Like you kind of, like there are some areas I feel as though you're under leveled, and then there's other areas where you're like kind of peaking. So it's a very interesting roller coaster in a sense. Um,
Yeah, that's my family. We deal in extremes.
that makes a lot of
Let's put it
sense.
this way. My brother's so much opposite to me that he didn't start speaking until he was 3 years old. Sorry. He didn't start speaking to my parents until he was 3 years old. He spoke to me when he was like 1.
Huh.
He would only talk to my parents through me.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
Sounds like you learned a lot of things from your family upbringing, quite a lot. And it didn't help that you
Well, I'm
were
always watching.
perceptive, ahead of the curve,
Mm.
you know, always on because, you know, you felt as though that you always need to be there for other people. And, you know, not everybody is very mindful of like what's healthy for you. So you might just always be at everyone's beck and call, and that might be very stressful,
Mm.
very anxious. One thing I wanted to throw in here before I start trying to process more heavily is you've played MMOs, I take it.
Oh yeah, ever since I was like 7.
What's your favorite class to play?
I tend to play healers actually.
Ah, man, I fucking knew it. All right, you fucking know what's coming now. All right, so you know in a raid, what is your number one priority? Tends to typically
Heal
be
everybody the full.
sure, but typically you have priorities of like heal the tank, heal other healers,
Mm.
but there's one priority that comes before everything else.
Well, don't die, of course.
And what do you have to do to not die?
Don't stand and stuff.
What else?
That's it. Just don't stand and stuff. Heal. I guess heal yourself, but
Yeah, yes.
uh,
Yes.
sorry, the meme answer for me is like don't take damage. So
No, that makes sense. You know, like yeah, don't stand in the fire, but yes,
yeah,
heal
yeah, yeah.
yourself. And why is it that you have to heal yourself?
Because eventually you'll die if you don't.
Mm-hmm.
But
A,
like,
a dead healer is no healer. A bad healer, a useless healer. You have to heal
that's
yourself.
true.
Because what do you think in your life that death represents? What is that similar to?
It's just what happens eventually.
Well, maybe a little less radical or extreme. So you.
Um, well, I mean, it means that I can't like do anything for anybody anymore. It's like literally the end. So
Burnout, shutdown mode.
yeah,
How do you feel about
for
that?
burnout, it's. Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you meant like death in the MMO equates to the burnout.
Mm-hmm.
Is that the metaphor? Okay,
Yeah.
okay. I thought we were talking about like actual death. I was like, oh my god, we're
Oh,
there.
yeah. Well, yeah, yes. I tried to explain that with like less radical, not as extreme, but like it's a parallel to burnout.
No, that's pretty fair. Like death in an MMO just means you get like revived or something.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, burnout's pretty correct. Granted, it happens not too much for me. Um,
Mm,
it's only like once or twice a year, honestly, or it's just like a month or so.
I still hear some significance. Like maybe you've developed a very strong tolerance to this because you're just putting yourself through such wear and tear. But 5 out of 10 in each, and then having felt suicidal about it before
No,
is
I've only felt suicidal under medicine. In terms of like
ah
actual during the actual things, the thoughts don't really come to me um, because when I'm in those modes, it's not that I am just burned out. It's literally that I feel like I can't do anything or have no right to do anything to help people. Um, and so like it's getting out of that. Eventually my anxiety raises back up to where like I've done nothing for so long that like I have to go and do stuff again. So
have to.
anxiety got me into this mess and it'll get me out of it. So
Why
I've
do
never
you?
felt suicidal because hmm?
I was gonna say, why do you have to do things?
um imagine like you've been bullied your whole life, right? And then like I don't know how like your life is, right? Like if you had like a lot of good friends or maybe you had like one friend or like no friends, right? But imagine you're like a person with no friends, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you live your whole life and you go through and you just have no friends, like nobody to talk to really. Um, that sounds like an eldritch nightmare, right? Um,
Mm-hmm.
but if I step in and am able to like offer consistency or like be a good friend and stuff to like a bunch of people, um, then I can end that kind of nightmare for a lot of people, right? But if I'm off, like if I go off at any time, then I'm not doing that. And there's 6 billion people in the world, so I might not be able to help everybody, but like you know,
Join the
maximize.
cause. Why do you think I'm here? And thank you for
Yeah,
participating. so
um,
so let's put the two and two together. You have a beautiful soul. You have the
uh,
you have the healing archetype is very strong within you. And I and
I
I
want to say, um, I don't think my soul's any nicer than anybody else's. Because like there are a lot
how
of ways where I can't
pause.
perform.
Hard pause. Why do you feel the need to minimize any sort of compliment toward you?
No, because they're like inaccurate, right? Because it's not an accurate picture of like how I am.
Hmm.
Like the way I am is nice, but it also has a lot of cons, right? There's a lot of downsides. For example, I don't get close to people because people are temporary to me a lot of the time because they've always been temporary.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Something you learned from
and
your
so like,
upbringing.
of course, um, and I'm getting better with that. I have some people that I've known for like 4 whole years at this point. Um, and so like, there's a lot of cons. For example, if someone wants to be like gift giving or they want to like get really close to me, they're gonna find themselves getting like really upset. Um, because I don't do that kind of stuff, right? Um, I'm not super relationship focused all the time. Um, like I like them, but then every time I've been in one, it's made me close off and like tunnel focus on one person, um, which inevitably makes me feel really bad.
Mm.
Um, and so there's just like this duality where yes, like people will find me nice and like me until they switch over and realize that I am almost the same way for almost every single person I meet.
So it sounds like you have a hard time building and maintaining close relationships. And let's say you have a capacity of having 5 close friends, you feel guilty for meeting more people and then, having the realization that you just can't take any more or even to
Oh
begin with.
no, I talk to like 10 to 15 people at a time.
Hmm.
My capacity is, I wouldn't call necessarily capacity. The guilt comes from one person. If I tunnel vision on one person for too long, which is what I can be prone to do,
Mm-hmm.
um, I will completely ignore like other people, or not completely ignore, but like I won't put as much work into the stuff that I do now, for example. Um, and so that's what I meant when I meant guilty. When it comes to like many people, I never feel guilty about talking to as many people as possible.
And does this still go back to the why did they like me?
Yeah.
So is the statement kind of like, why do they like me when eventually in the long run they'll realize that I have a difficulty in getting close to people? And that
No,
everything
that's not
between
the
us
only
may be
flaw I
temporary?
have. No, that's not the only flaw I have at all. I'd consider that a minor flaw, if anything. I think people can get around that.
Well, not all
Um,
relationships have to be long term to begin with. You could give somebody a short interaction and do
mhm.
more than anyone else in their life, and like you don't have to stay close to them, but like that's all your relationship was with them, is something that was just very minor, moderate, significant. The
Mhm.
relationships can bend to whichever fits or is organically compatible. You don't have to be
I
close
guess
with
another
everyone.
thing, I guess there's another thing to point out. There's two things actually. There's this side and then this side. Um, on this side, every relationship I've been in, as in like I've called my partner, um, has been with a stranger, someone I've never met,
Huh.
and basically a spontaneous relationship. Um, because I struggle to like I struggle with friends because I know how much they know about me.
Hmm.
Um, and then there's the other side. most of the people I meet are typically at their lowest point in life or very low. Um, and so that's where I tend to like, because it is very easy for people to open up to me pretty much any time. Because I don't have like a super threatening aura or anything like that. Uh, I don't mean, or I don't believe in like auras or anything like that in terms of like that stuff.
Well,
Like
it's
I'm not
just how
gonna
you
start
present
throwing
yourself. Are you
birth
easy to
signs
talk
at
to?
you. Um, I think I am. Uh, I don't think I'm necessarily abrasive because I can understand pretty much any person at this point. I guess it's like
Hmm.
once you realize that your parents are human, then you can really understand that like anybody can be human, right?
That's
Um,
definitely a very
like
golden point to point out.
yeah, like don't know if this is like an experience everybody has, but have you ever like, do you know when you realize like your parents are not like superheroes or like immortal or whatever?
Everybody at some point in their life
Um,
typically comes to that conclusion. It's definitely a milestone of maturity.
yeah, and for me, it's basically when I was like 5. Um, like it came on in elementary school, like very early. Because I learned very quickly my parents' stories, and it was very easy for me to put together like they did not have parents, they don't know how to be parents. And so like even to this day, they still do stuff that's like super questionable. They try really hard. Like I make my parents sound really bad, but um, they try extremely hard. It's very easy to see that they're trying. It's just that, they refuse to
Accept help.
try in a way. Well, I've strong-armed them to accepting help because I'm not qualified to be a therapist for my brother. Um, I can be present and I can help him in the immediacy of an episode and I can give him support and all that kind of stuff, right? But I'm not qualified to help him long term. I can't get my brother to work through something that I'm not trained in or have never been in, right?
Hmm.
Um, which means that I have the option to push my parents to let him go to therapy, right? And I've always been this way because in lieu of my parents not knowing what to do, I've always looked up what to do. I've always strong-armed them. My parents used to be homophobic. I stopped talking to my dad for 6 months straight when he said something homophobic. Not because any of my siblings were LGBT, but because of the possibility that they were.
Yeah.
Like if they hadn't, which my youngest sister came out as bi, and so am I. Um, but yeah, when my dad says something homophobic in front of my sisters and I don't know what they are, I can make the connection that he could be saying something that's hurting them, right? And so I fight with my dad constantly. And respect to my dad, he takes it in stride a lot. I think a lot of parents would beat their kids or something for speaking out. My dad has always listened to my side or pretended to listen to my side at the very least.
Yeah.
Um, but he's pushed, right? Like my sister came out as bi 2 years ago to my parents, or last year, sorry, to my parents. And my parents, instead of freaking out or being like, I don't know what that is or whatever, uh, started bragging about it actually, because they're weirdos. Um, but a significant step up from when I knew them, right? When I lived with them, that was not an option to do. Um, so yeah, I forgot the point.
It's okay. I can edit everything together. Well, okay. So the the first goal that I would definitely consider is helping helping you figure out what your path is to finding peace so that you can, one, feel better, but also be at your best and not, put yourself through potential burnout to where you can't be there for other people. And it's hard to enjoy anything when you have, if you're always on, significantly stressed, and then you have all this cortisol in your system that makes it, hard for you to enjoy anything. But if you start to lower your stress, then you can start enjoying things again. So it's
Is
not.
cortisol like a stress hormone?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I try to. So there's, neuroscience is so much more like complicated than that. But like in simplistic terms, I kind of like to think of it as like two bars in a game where like if your stress is too high, then it's hard for you to enjoy anything. So you have to just lower or manage your stress. Stress is a good thing when managed at a decent level because it helps you stay focused. But too much leads to anxiety and then depression and then SI thoughts. So. And
Yeah,
and
there's definitely a spiral that can come.
being that you mentioned that you have a hard time kind of knowing who you are, taking care of yourself, being somebody who heals themselves. There are so many healers in the world who just will let themselves die to the fire, and the fire being, always on. In order for you to run out of the fire, you have to learn how to, relax. But you're always standing in it, and you're always taking damage, and then eventually it catches up to you. You're always anxious.
That's true. I guess there's only like a question in the air, right? Which is like, is there a way to find peace, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which, sounds like an easy yes, right?
Just take care of
There's
yourself,
probably a
forehead.
lot of like, yeah, just don't be sad, duh. Jeez, what are you doing? Why do we need therapists? People should just pick up
God,
themselves up by the bootstraps.
Yeah, life do be like it do. Fucking done. Solved. All right, we can wrap up.
Yeah.
See ya.
Yeah. Hi, YouTube. Just I don't know. Be neurotypical. Duh.
Duh. Well,
Look
I mean,
at the most normal person you've ever met and just do what they do.
God, that's horrible advice. Well, I mean,
no,
okay,
peace
it's very complicated because everybody is, you might be neurotypical or you might be neurodivergent, and if you're neurodivergent, it's like playing life on, master difficulty mode. There are so many things that you have to be aware of, like you have a strong passion in helping others, and and you were taught growing up that you need to take care of other people, and there may be so many other things that make it so difficult to kind of unlearn that and give yourself some compassion and some me time, and taking care of yourself to where you're not always on. And you kind of the other thing that you kind of hear in there is like you have problems with relationships, and like that's a very common problem with people who are neurodivergent, is because you're highly misunderstood a lot of the time, and it's also a problem that's very under researched or supported in terms of like, well, if somebody has ADHD and autism, like how do they find stimulation and fulfillment, that has some longevity to it, so that you can be feeling at least good or neutral, content, as your days go by.
Well, the difficult part there, right, is like when you're neurodivergent, right? If you're around neurotypical people or people who are like lower on the neurodivergency scale or something.
Mm-hmm.
And they're doing their best to, meet you halfway, but it's just not like enough, right? Like
Yes.
there's like an alien language or like there's a barrier there or anything like that.
Or it's like kind
Can't
of
really
like
fault them.
you're like 100 feet above them and they just can't reach you, and it's sad. They just can't.
Yeah. Or, there's a short story I wrote and it's everybody's stuck in their own pit, right?
Mm-hmm.
Everybody's just at the bottom. And some people have managed to climb out, they might have had like rocks or stuff, but there's another person sometimes at the top who's willing to help you out of your pit, but some people have dug deeper or some people's are just, you know, very deep to begin with. And so they can't just reach in. And so what do they have to do? Do they get more people to reach in? Are there any ropes? Well, there's not. You don't always have that kind of stuff. And even when you get out of your own pit, everybody's still at the bottom of a larger pit. And so
So what option is left?
well, there's only climbing. Do you help others climb out of theirs, or do you climb out of the larger pit? If you're doing that and you're not helping others, are you condemning them to sit at the bottom of their hole? If you're helping people at the bottom climb up and you fall in, then what? If you're both at the bottom, right?
Well, you got out of your own hole. You managed to climb out. But in the same
Sure,
respect,
but if you fall into a deeper one,
if you fall into a deeper one with obstacles that you're not familiar with, it may be harder for you to kind of help them climb out alongside yourself.
sure. But the point of the story, to some degree, was that there's a limit for everybody and how deep they're willing to go to help others, right? And it's completely natural. It's perfectly fine, right?
And some people kind of, in order for them to get out of their own holes, it's almost as though, like, imagine that they had adhesive to their feet, but it's only the terrain that they're on, it's specific to them. They have to climb out of their own hole, and there's nothing that you can do to help them with it.
To some degree, yes. I think a large part of, improvement comes from yourself. But at the same time, I think people need people. Bringing that concept back, it's so much harder to get out of a hole if you don't have someone at the top to offer their hand, right? Or even better, many people at the top willing. If you have someone who's isolated, sorry, go ahead.
Well, there's just something about people needing people that I don't entirely agree with. It's like, yes, there's a need to socialize. There's love, there's intimacy, there's companionship. But there's a certain degree of autonomy, being able to do things yourself, that everybody needs, because I relate this to the garden principle of, if you have two flower pots and, somebody has a hole in it, so it's like leaking water, no matter how much water you offer them, it's just going to leak out as well. And soon you're not going to have any more water to give them. So as much as the other person could accept your water that you're giving them to help them kind of survive, there's going to be a point where you need to heal yourself, take care of yourself, and there's going to be a point where they need to patch up their own hole and do it themselves. Not everyone can be helped.
Kind of, right? After they patch their hole, they'll still need water, in which case your analogy is perfectly fine to give them water after they patch themselves up, right? If their problem is that they have a hole and they're losing water, and then they patch the hole, they still have lost water.
Mm-hmm.
I think the reason, in my opinion, that I think people need people is that that hole can never be patched unless they know how to patch it. And the only way for people to learn anything is through other people, whether that's the ideas
Only?
of literature or media. Yes, I do believe that. Literature, media, I don't think there's a lot of ways for people. I don't think it's safe for people to just sit alone and mentally extrapolate how to fix their own lives on their own, because people do not have a lot of the knowledge or a lot of the they don't have a lot of the education of philosophy or the education of psychology or the understanding of like what could be wrong in the first place in order to make, changes. And a lot of people are, you know, a lot of people are messed up young, right? So by the time they're in their early 20s, it's a big problem because in the United States you get kicked out of your house at like fucking 17.
How do you relate this perspective to the teach a man a fish analogy?
You should teach a man to fish, and someone has to teach the man to fish, right?
Or I mean,
You can give the man a fish.
how do you expect the first group of human beings to have learned how to fish?
They worked it out in groups.
Let's say you
That's
have a
been our
mountaineer.
strategy, right?
The point I'm getting to is that there's like autonomy is super important. It would be
Oh, yes, autonomy is good. You should be able to do things on your own. But learning to do everything you've learned to do has been taught to you by someone else.
I don't know why I so vehemently disagree with that. I think
It's a fundamentally difficult concept. Because
it's not entirely like I agree with it to some degree, just not 100%. That because like that is not encouraging.
Oh, I apologize.
Dependency.
There's another aspect to it.
Dependence. That is encouraging dependency.
Kind of, right? We are dependent on other people, but when a psychologist talks about dependency, right, they mean an individual being entirely dependent on another individual.
Well,
right?
that's interdependency.
That's toxic.
Where interdependency is like where you can healthily accept other people's help and the help of society, so on and so forth, to where it's not harming your health. Like if somebody was too stubborn to go to a doctor because he's going to try and do it to himself, yeah, that would be toxic independence. But if you always need to be helped by somebody else, that is definitely codependency, which is also not super healthy. So it's the middle ground that I'm kind of looking to find here.
You shop at a grocery store, right?
Mm-hmm.
You don't hunt your own food. You need someone to do that.
That is interdependency.
You probably could go and hunt your own food, right? You could learn to shoot a gun and hunt your own food, right? But then you'd need a gun. Someone has to make that for you.
And then the society is born, where you have people playing different roles, and we're interdependent on each other.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Humans need humans, which is why we have society. On a large scale, small scale, there's a lot of humans, a lot of people who are isolated. I'm far from isolated. I am extremely privileged. I have 3 very good roommates. I have 2 parents and 3 siblings. And that is just the immediate list, right? Outside, I have more people, which is why I'm more well-adjusted than a lot of other people, I would say.
Mm-hmm.
But if I was the same person, but I was put in a position where I only had, one parent and they were alcoholic, or I was switching houses a bunch, and then I moved out at 18 or 16 or something, and I just lived in an apartment by myself and, did technician work or something. You would have a person who is not in a safe position to work out their problems on their own, which is why we get a lot of like extremists, right? Because they will shift to an extreme on, either side, whether it's left or
Is
right.
that where you get your
Um,
perspective of the lack of safety? Is the what is it, the production or the growth of radicals, people sort of being left to their own devices and then kind of going to an extreme?
it's not that they're left to their own devices. It's that they're left to the devices of the internet.
The internet?
Falling into rabbit holes, yes, falling into rabbit holes is extremely, extremely easy when it comes to the internet, and it's because of how it works, right?
Well,
A YouTube video, for example.
how do you suppose people? I mean, there's plenty of people that are what's the word? I mean, not technologically involved. Let's say, they're off the grid. They're mountaineers. They're living a simple life or just one away from the internet and social media. So,
Hmm.
so how do you mean for these people?
I mean, if someone goes out and decides to live out in the wilderness, right, that hints at a little bit of neurodivergency, in my opinion. But at the same time, even if there's an entirely normal person and they want to go out and live in the woods, like they're just living the libertarian dream of a cottage that they built themselves and they hunt their own food and all that or whatever. Um, doesn't discount the fact they grew up in society, right? And those people typically don't go extremist. Those people tend to be perfectly fine in their isolation because they chose it. But I would argue you probably don't need to tell those people to be super introspective, right? Like, do those people need to come back to society, or are they perfectly fine to choose that lifestyle? They're not hurting anybody, so I say it's fine for them to choose that if they still want to.
Okay, and then this all ties
But we
back.
have, though, the dangerous isolation is the one that's not intentional. That's the kind that comes from when people drop out of society involuntarily, because they don't feel like anybody can relate with them. So when they go on the internet and they find these groups that relate with them, it becomes very easy for them to start shifting slightly over, sometimes a short
Oh,
period of time, sometimes a long period of time.
what's that called? It's being vulnerable to manipulative groups.
Yeah. Boomers are that way. A lot of boomers on Facebook have shifted to being very extremist, because of how Facebook works. And social media is a huge, huge problem with that as well. It's not just, people being lonely. It's people being lonely plus social media, creating rabbit holes at a rapid pace. YouTube, if you click one anti-feminist video or something, or maybe an anti-feminist YouTuber makes like a video that's unrelated, it'll start recommending you all sorts of people after you watch just one. You'll get into like Ben Shapiro, like all that kind of stuff, right? And that's one rabbit hole you can go down. On the other end, boomers have a high trust value for their close friend group, right? And so false news spreads because it's shared by a friend, and
Well, I mean, this
someone
a lot of
goes, "My
this
friend wouldn't lie to
is.
me."
I would try and summarize this as you had something
Yeah.
happen in your life that kind of caused emotional vulnerability, and people tend to
Mhm.
be, fall into bitterness of where they want confirmation bias, and they kind of go out of their way to search for that, and then it may be reinforced by other people who share the same opinion, and they may enjoy being in echo chambers, so on and so forth. And then that is the rabbit hole that you're talking about, where they get attached to these different groups, and then just rant and rant and rant, but not actually, look to break themselves out of a potentially harmful cycle.
Well, yes, it's that they make friends with heavy quotation marks,
It's
with
people of the
people
same view.
who happen to be in these groups. Well, it's not even often in the same view. It's just that they, you know, people who share their original views don't like them because they might be either neurodivergent or they're edgy jokesters or like any sort of reason.
Well, people want a sense of
And then
community
they
and
make,
support, and that's kind of what they're finding in some of these groups, especially after they've been hurt. Most common being
let's put it
with
this way, I've been banned for servers because of how I am.
a difference of opinion,
My
you say.
propensity to like, yeah, I tend to be fairly argumentative, but I also tend to like not tolerate when people gang up on anybody.
Well, yeah,
Um,
because
so
that's
I've been
just
banned from servers for that sort of thing.
well, because you're calling them out on not
Um,
having a dialogue. People don't like when you call them out on having echo
mm,
chambers to where they're not hearing other sides, and being more open to walking different paths. But even
that's the
so,
thing. Sorry, go ahead.
I was just say, even so, I tend to take this from a more macro perspective of not putting so many labels that politics kind of likes to attach, because that can be somewhat
Mm,
limiting. It's useful to have language to sort of communicate, but in some sense,
mm,
I feel as though that it ties people down. Uh, but relating this back to your case, we were talking about why people need each other, and then um your passion or perseverance or will, your desire to kind of be there for so many other
mm.
people, and then combining that with ADHD and the autism, and the difficulty in maintaining close relationships, not really sticking around for too long. And I think that's kind of the gist of what we've been talking about. And then overall, you sort of having somewhat of a desire to alleviate the depression and anxiety.
Yes, I would like to get those out of control. Sorry, get those under
Out of
control.
control. All right, I can help with that.
I'd like to push them up to a 10, please. I think 5 is failing. I'm a
I think that's something
I'm
that you don't want to achieve.
um I think that I do agree with the healing thing, which is why I do look to get therapy, since I have insurance now. Um, it doesn't inconvenience people, gives work to therapists, all that kind of stuff. Um, it is entirely reasonable to do so, and it's a step that allows me to not have 2 months of my year wasted every year because
From
I'm
burnout.
crashing.
Yes.
Yeah, I could use those months to do stuff. Um, but in the end, my end game is not necessarily achieving happiness or achieving
Happiness,
any sort of
fulfillment,
goal or
peace,
achieving
meaning.
peace. Yeah, that stuff doesn't really motivate me very much. Or at least it doesn't right now because it doesn't
I
seem.
I'd say it doesn't. This is my hypothesis: is that none of that is going to make sense to you until you learn how to be off every now and then, to give yourself time to recharge to, you know, whatever your healthy baseline may be. It's going to be higher than a lot of people
Hmm.
because of being neurodivergent and very high functioning. But like a lot of what I'm saying is something that I can highly relate to because I'm, in the same boat but just on a different path. Um,
Yeah, yeah.
it's kind of
I
like
guess the question is like, how can you find peace um, when there's so little of it around you, right?
and that's why environment plays a huge part in it as well. You've kind of always been, in moving from place to place or surrounded by a lot of family members or, you're now surrounded by roommates and everything. Uh, so while you can make progress in those environments, it's going to be very difficult to, because
Hmm.
something that I'm kind of hearing is like, it's a bit it's like a very inverse codependency in a way, and like, I'm not trying to diagnose or anything here, but like I'm just giving my perspective on it. Is like you have this dependency to help other people, like, or just kind of, you know do things for others. I'd say it's just imbalanced. It's good. You have and you again, like, you would minimize any sort of compliments I would give you, so maybe I'm just gonna not
Hmm.
do that unless I want to annoy you. Um, but I'd say that, this imbalance is sort of preventing you from, or the imbalance is causing the anxiety and depression, uh, in many ways. Um, but there,
And it's entirely intentional though, because it's, in my opinion, dangerous to not do that. Um, in the sense that uh, I don't want someone to be dependent or codependent on me.
yes.
One, because I'm not going to be around very long. Not in an emo sense, but in a literal sense, I'm not going to be physically present if you make friends with me in real life, and because I will move eventually, and I won't be present because eventually your problems are going to go away and you're going to move on.
Mm-hmm.
And typically when that happens, people don't hang around me anymore because um, their friendship is built on the problems in the first place, right?
Yeah,
Um,
that was something else that I wanted to touch on, is like, if you've had difficulty socializing with people, due to the neurodivergency, um, some intermediary solutions that I've kind of heard for people is kind of connecting with others that are, like you said, you have a friend and you sort of stun lock each other, and that can be very
hmm,
fulfilling. So sort of surrounding yourself with similar people in that regard, high intelligence, high functioning, because people with who are neurodivergent, kind of tend to have deficiencies in, their dopamine receptors.
tired.
So they need a lot more stimulation to sort of compensate for that. So like that kind of
Hmm,
aligns with why you need to do so much, is because if you're not doing all of that, you feel kind of bummed out or stagnant, and
yeah,
that also would support the feeling the need to kind of move to entirely new areas and hop around the U.S. and whatnot, is because the way you were brought up in your childhood with your parents moving all the time, military family, combined with ADHD is like one hell of a motivator to kind of shift locations a lot. And that part causes problems because it makes it difficult for you to get close to people because they're like, well, I'm just going to move anyways. I don't want to hurt your feelings or devastate you. And then also not being able to break out of that cycle because you've kind of had difficulty building and maintaining long-term relationships. So you kind of satisfied your need to socialize by helping people and feeling the need that people need people, but like it's a little bit of a contradiction because if people need people, people would need you to be consistent and to sort of stay with them rather than move away. So definitely a lot of things to kind of talk to a therapist about for sure. Like I can't really do therapy here in a coaching interview.
Fair.
But everything that you have talked about has been very enlightening, and I would want to try and find some sort of a point to make an improvement. So you talked about, anxiety and depression being at like 5 out of 10. It's kind of a bother in your life. Difficulty holding long-term relationships, always being on, not relaxing, moving every, few years, kind of growing up in a very, transitional environment. Parents are kind of influential in your belief of people need people, so on and so forth, and other things that contribute to symptoms of having nervous tics and other things that make it hard for you to kind of enjoy your life or find peace or happiness, meaning, fulfillment, and having numbed out emotions to where you feel like it's difficult to even understand those things, or that there's not even a motivation toward having those things because you haven't felt or been able to relax for so long. Some of the things that you said helped was surrounding yourself with good friends, meeting people who are similar that you can kind of have, high functioning or very like top tier conversations with. What were some of the other things that helped?
I mean, getting a new job helps.
Mm-hmm.
Because I haven't had a job in like months, so.
So doing things that sort of bring new challenges and novelty to your life. And then the things that made things worse.
I mean, the things that make things worse, like financial stuff, for the most part.
Mm-hmm.
So,
any additional
I'm always straddling
stresses?
the line of like poverty. I mean, people, like, a lot of people struggle. Like, a lot of people are always struggling, that I know specifically. Obviously, I'm not speaking generally. But like, they're going through bad times, and when they go through bad times, I go through bad times. Just the way it is.
So I could see how the everything chained together and not having like room to relax and needing that high amount of pleasure and moving to new places. Oh, hold on, I think that lag. So moving to new places and just experiencing new things that god damn it, that lag made me lose my train of thought. Because it like warps my entire view and it's like fucking like
I guess you asked I guess this kind of generalizes it. You asked who I am, right? Like, what is Kelfie? Or who is Kelfie? And it is everything in the last 4-ish hours that we've been talking. That's the answer, right? That mess of issues and virtues, all incoherently put under a superficial person who wants to help everybody, right? Um, and from my perspective, everybody is somewhat like that to me. Like, they're not as complex to me. I take everything I see at face value, right? Um, and so when people ask me who I am, I don't consider all the stuff that's we've been talking about. I can only list the things that I'm immediately thinking about, or the things that I am to the person, right?
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, those things are not less. Those things are no less myself than any other part of me, right? So.
Mm-hmm. And then that comes full circle back to the problems that you're experiencing in your day-to-day life and how that they all chain together. The anxiety and the depression, inability to sort
Well,
of...
actually circles back to my favorite color is teal.
Yes. Yes, that's truly what it all comes back to. You just gotta fucking get some teal paint and just fucking put it all over your face and go to the top of, like, a cliff like the Lion King, and then it'll all be better. That's something that you can do after this video. Send us pictures.
I'll send you guys pictures, but you guys it's gonna cost you. Pictures are never free.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So the other thing that we were talking about was things that could help, and you mentioned therapy kind of being the main one, being that until you sort of, unlock these repressed emotions and kind of figure out ways to relax and other aspects of
Mm.
your life, that it's going to be very difficult to really do anything else that might be helpful. And we were trying to lead to what we could walk away with and do today that might be helpful.
Mm.
And then we were gonna do the outro stuff. But
Hesitantly, I have to say that I don't want to move forward on a lot of stuff until I go to therapy,
mm,
like full-on therapy, only because um, such things always pose a risk for me to spiral. Um,
right.
Change is always not super good to do when you're autistic or have ADHD. Once you
Mm-hmm.
get out of your rhythms, pretty much anything could happen.
Yeah.
Um, the little things I'm doing is I'm spending a lot more time with people because I want to or because they want to, but like because it's me and not because like they're having a bad time. I'm doing that more often, which sounds extraordinarily small, but it is in fact you know very different for me for the most part. Because there were just 4 or 5 years where reliably I was hanging out with someone because they were in crisis mode, and I would just go through that like every night or something. So,
Mm-hmm. All right.
um, yeah.
So if you were to give advice or guidance or a statement to everyone watching, what would you tell them?
Mm, hmm. I guess my advice is more for people like me who I know would never listen to this advice, but it's to not be not be like me.
Mm-hmm.
Um but more specifically, you just have to like turn it down to 40%. Like help people 40% of the time at most. And do things on your own 60% of the time. That's probably a good ratio. I know for a fact nobody like me, people who are healers, have ever listened to that advice in their whole lives, and they've told every other person like us to do the same thing. So I guess my other advice is to not listen to that advice and instead listen to the advice that you get from everybody else telling you that thing. I'm not very good with giving advice. I'm not a...
No, that was good. I think you nailed it just, and like I can edit it, of course, but I think you nailed it just with that. You know.
Oh, my other advice, subscribe to my OnlyFans if you want to feel real joy and not
Oh
the
my
fake
God.
joy given by shrinks.
Oh my God. Wow. Do we even have to do a fucking outro, you prick? Like, what the fuck?
I'm
God
sorry.
damn.
The opportunity was a little bit too prime.
No, I'll throw that in there. Okay. We figured out that all you need to do to solve all of your troubles is just relax.
I'll relax in hell.
No!
Alright, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Not to you, to me.
Oh, thanks. Are you gonna draw some majestic art?
What do you want me to draw? I'll draw anything.
Draw your favorite thing in the world. Your absolute favorite thing.
I'll draw almost anything.
Yeah, so draw your favorite thing. What is that? It's a cat. It's a bunny.
It's a doggy.
Oh. He's got some big old ears there. God damn.
It's a Pomeranian.
Dude, the fucking look at this. Look at this in relation to my hand. It's like a whole nother dog in this ear.
Yeah, dogs have big ears.
Right.
There you go. I do love dogs. They're actually my favorite. Oh, and my cat. I love my cat.